Rock and roll.
Have we started?
Nope, waiting on you, sir.
All right.
Waiting on you.
All right. I will call to order the emergency meeting for the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. The date is March 25th, 2025, and the time is 5:16, I guess, 18. Purpose for the meeting is to review a corrective action plan that our airport manager, Craig Kuhn, has put together. This comes as a result of a conversation that I listened to. I was actually in his office yesterday with Melissa.
Can I do roll call?
Oh, yeah.
Do we need to?
Yeah, would that?
Yeah, let's do that. Sorry.
Kirkland. No, you're fine. You're Mr. Kirkland.
Present.
Mr. Pryor.
Here.
Mr. Dagenot.
Here.
Mr. Ludwig.
Here.
Ms. Hall.
Here.
General Layford had other scheduled things, and Colonel Bernie.
Here.
Thank you for everyone making this on such short notice. That's literally 40 minutes.
It's a record.
8 minutes in the case.
And let the record show that Jim Taylor's here also. So as I was saying, as yesterday afternoon, Craig got Melissa with the FAA out of the Atlanta office on the phone, had a conversation about the email he had provided to Katura, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, March 5th, and we had not heard anything back. So Craig made the call to try to get a response and got a hold of Melissa. I believe she is Katura's supervisor.
She is.
So during that conversation, she had shared with us that they had been exchanging emails literally through the weekend about our, or about the email that Craig had provided on this idea about 1129 and changing that category on a temporary basis. So with that, she also followed up and was saying, okay, so send us a corrective action plan that's going to include everything that you had put in your email. But in addition to that, there needs to be timeline milestones for the progression that you're going to propose in the corrective action plan. So armed then with at least that information, we knew that we had to resolve the safety issue, which changing this category would move those safety areas outside of the racetrack. And then we would also, though, need to follow up with all of the steps and things that will have to occur within that first 30 days. And that's what's listed here on this corrective action plan that you have in front of you. We still will need to do, as it's shown there, the change in use, land change in use will have to be addressed. And then directly on the heels of that, once that's approved by the FAA, then the appraiser can start his reappraisal based on the guidelines that the FAA had offered to him during a meeting that we had a couple of months back, January. So, questions about the corrective action plan?
So Bill has seen this and has given his blessing on it. He actually kind of helped, especially with the 7460 stuff. That's something he does every time they build something on an airport. It requires that review process. And
Sir, if you could, we're having a meeting real quick. We're having a board meeting. We'll be out of your way here shortly.
Did you have an opportunity to explain to Buddy the change in the runway?
I
Have you
copied
submitted?
everybody on my email, so I think they should have had a chance to review it.
Okay.
And that's just a temporary change. My initial request was 180 days to give us time to review stuff, but Melissa said they would probably only consider a 30-day initial approval, and then it's going to have to be revisited every 30 days. If the FAA does not see progress taking place, they will very likely rescind my proposal and return the RPZ to its original form.
And one of the concerns for that was we had shared with Melissa that firm will have to go through a permitting process with St. John's Water Management. We have no idea of what that time frame looks like. Now, potentially that might be able to be reduced a little bit because we do have some contacts that sit on that board and they may be able to take and prioritize our request or the firm request for that. So, but again, we shared with Melissa, we're talking about a 30-day, to start off with, but the next 30 days, we're just not sure because of permitting where that may fall. She was fine with that, and that was the purpose for giving them an update every 30 days.
So one of my questions is, if we agree to this, and I'm assuming that we'll have to have a motion and second and a vote, we're just approving a roadmap.
Correct.
So if we get down to the new appraisal and there's some discussion about it or disagreement, we're not agreeing now to an unknown, correct?
No, sir. And I don't think, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but I don't think the board's going to have a lot of say in what the appraisal and fair market value is. The FAA is going to directly approve his appraisal.
Because that's one thing we learned too, that once Mr. Albright comes back with his revised appraisal, that's going before an FAA appraisal review group.
And also, just so it's not sprung on anyone, either in a phone call or an email, I think Katura said this, she thinks this may actually qualify for a second appraisal and then a review of the both. I don't know that for sure. I just want, don't be surprised if they ask for that.
Well, I guess that's where I'm going with that. So would they, currently the thought is that they'll use his current appraisal after the land change?
No, actually, Mr. Albright did his appraisal based off of the actual usage of the land. The FAA is telling him it has to be industrial, commercial. So
Highest and best use.
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
So the number is going to be different. How much, we don't know, but
okay.
But in any case, like Scott said, we're looking at a roadmap for a proposal to ultimately be submitted to the FAA.
correct. And that's the point of the emergency part of the meeting, is to get that submitted to the FAA as soon as possible. It was discussed, well, let's put it on the April agenda. I didn't really want to wait. I appreciate you all showing up, but I really didn't want to wait a week to.
Right.
And I'll say for my part, given everything that the board has dealt with in the last year on this issue, and given that we finally received FAA guidance and they want us to move fast, I thought this qualified as an emergency. Yeah, that was great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Our bylaws do spell out some criteria for an emergency call meeting.
When safety is concerned.
Yes,
And this is
Correct.
about safety.
correct.
So I've got a two-part question. So they've already, I think you've already gotten potential approval by the FAA of this,
Let's call it verbal.
okay? And so
Okay.
if we
This might mean the same thing.
Right.
so if we redesignate this as an A1 small, that means they can start driving on the track again that we have had the cease and desist.
Correct.
What is our liability now that this shrinks? Does that mitigate or eliminate our liability?
It mitigates and likely eliminates.
Okay. And then the second part is, do we need to do an additional vote to rescind the cease and desist? Will we need another?
I don't think so, Scott. That's a good
This would
question.
see that?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think this action will supersede that cease and desist order,
Okay, okay,
because this will effectively, for a temporary period of time, move the RPZ.
And it's a temporary action.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's why they put it on a tight timeframe.
right.
So the other thing that we learned too, that we had not heard before until that conversation yesterday afternoon, was that they will review this in Atlanta. I'm sure Orlando will see it as well. But Melissa said that this would actually go to the director for approval
Okay,
with the FAA. So,
okay. Has the, I know you've just shared with me, you've had some discussion. You haven't really gone into much depth, but you have been in communication with the firm.
Have.
Are they understanding of this roadmap and are they accepted to this? I mean, as near as you can tell on the surface, no guarantees.
Yes.
Okay,
And with these 30-day, with the 30-day extension, if there is issues as far as just, yes, permitting can get bogged down sometimes, and I know you said we may have some leads that could help speed that up. If there is a point there that there is permitting that they're held up on, is that still considered forward progress? We're just because of things that are still beyond anyone's control.
yes.
Okay, so
I would like to think that if we report to the FAA that the permits have been submitted and it's, within the jurisdiction of the permitting agency now, and I think the FAA would understand we don't have any control over that. So I would like to think that they would give us a little bit of slack there, us and the tenant.
so the next question I have is, so if we approve this today, are we going to have to assemble as a board each month, or can we give you the authority, as long as there's progress being made, that you have the authority to petition the FAA to get another 30-day extension? Because you're going to keep doing this every month, right?
I would think if nothing changes, your approval should be continuous.
So we can just include that in the motion? Is that fair to say, as long as there's progress?
If that's the will of the board to authorize Mr. Kuhn
And I know you're going to be in communication with this man and this man.
And Bill.
and Bill.
So you will collectively see whether there's progression.
And I will still keep the board updated, obviously. I'm not just gonna go and,
Well, I'm saying where we don't have to meet again
Sure.
to authorize another 30-day extension.
Yeah,
If you see progress, I think we should allow you or you the ability to continue, because we don't want to interrupt and then suddenly have a day or two where they can't use the track again because it's
that would not be
voted
good.
back. So,
Right.
okay. Well, I'll make a motion, we accept this with the stipulation that they are moving forward, making progression, and that we also authorize the airport manager, under guidance from the chair and our attorney
Engineer.
and engineer, to each month extend the 30-day window as necessary to continue this going.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions or any other discussion?
Yeah, just something
Let
that
me-
just crossed my mind. The comment you just made about using the track or rescinding the cease and order for using that piece of the track. Now, this timeline really doesn't address using or not using that piece of the track. It just addresses track modifications.
Well, the only reason
To be
that you use
made.
the track is because there's a safety issue.
Yeah, and once we
Right.
make the change, there's not a safety issue.
Temporary change.
Right, right, temporary change.
I think the way I'm thinking of it is it's a temporary change in the runway, which will temporarily, for as long as that temporary change is allowed by FAA, will in turn temporarily allow the tenant to use that encroaching trackage. Okay, but if ultimately we don't get past this temporary phase and the RPZ goes back to where it is and the track is still there, we're going to have the same problem. But this is all directed toward creating a situation where that track goes away ultimately, and the runway can be moved back to its ordinary length, and the RPZ moves back to where it was. And in the meantime, the tenant has reconfigured the track elsewhere on its leasehold property.
Excellent. So here's my question. And Craig, this is you to say, okay, when we're looking at progress for the 30 days, 60 days, or whatever, they need to know, okay, how are you going to reconfigure that track? remember, because of where we thought the runway could go past if they ever extended it.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, that's on us to say, okay, we're going to give you where that is. So
They already had that depiction.
They got that?
information.
They have all,
okay, so that's
Bill
good.
Prang put
Yep,
together
okay.
CAD,
Okay,
and
they know that.
we have sent it to their
Yeah.
lawyers.
Okay.
So they have the information that their engineer or surveyor would need to plot those future safety zones on the ground.
Can I chime in?
Yes, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're exactly right, but there's additional info, with the discussion with Melissa yesterday that I asked, given that the runway extension, I don't like using that word because would be moving it if it.
It'd be
were to happen,
an
Disconnect.
adjustment,
but As long as
Decoupling.
as long as that's not taking place and the tenant agrees to reconfigure within their current lease boundaries, would the FAA be okay with that in a written agreement? And she said, yes, I think so. So I think the tenant has plans to reconfigure within their current lease boundary with a 10-foot setback.
Yep.
With the understanding that if the FAA ever does prioritize and fund, and even if they said that today,
Right.
it's a 5-year,
Right.
I mean, it's several years.
But here's my question. I think, Craig, we need to know what their plan is, because if they keep using the track, that's fine. But are they not putting a Band-Aid on this and not building the new track where that's going to go?
The FAA will rescind my
Yeah,
approval.
so all I'm saying is,
The tenant has to demonstrate.
yes,
Within the timeframes
Yeah.
that this spells out, the progress that this schedule spells out in effecting a reconfigured track.
yeah,
And the
That's
start,
huge.
the
Yeah.
start is to submit their plan for the
Okay.
reconfigured track to
Okay.
the airport board for review and approval.
And I did get a overhead map from Lorena, and if you haven't all seen that, I have a copy, I can either make a copy or send you a picture or whatever, but that, I think, I'm talking to her, it sounds like they are considering that their submission for reconfiguration.
under the corrective action strategy, if you go down to item 4, tenant will complete all track redesign task and submit a new track layout for board consideration. After board approval, the KHAA will assist the tenant with making a formal submission to the FAA.
okay, good.
And that could be on April 1st agenda,
Okay, no,
Right.
awesome.
I would think.
Well, as I read this, that task, which is tasked to the tenant
Yeah,
with our cooperation,
Yep.
is to be done and submitted by April 25. Is that-
That's my guidelines,
Yeah.
yes.
okay,
You know, in my email, I had actually listed March 31st as their deadline early on.
right, right,
So, you know, with our communication that we were having.
right.
So obviously,
Well,
This,
they're
I think,
considering
would-
it submitted for that purpose of the
Yeah.
deadline, yeah.
yeah,
Just so that we have no gray areas here.
Right,
I would like for someone from firm with authority on firm letterhead to send that to us and formally submit it to the board
Okay.
for review and
Yeah.
approval.
that's good.
Right.
So that we know that
Yeah.
that's what they want us to
Bingo.
review.
Yep,
Sounds good.
and the sooner the better. I mean, there's some time ranges here, but certainly if they want to do it quicker,
right,
I'm all for that.
great,
Yep.
even better. So, but I agree with Mr. Taylor. I think we need a formal
Yeah.
written
Yep.
Written submission, yeah.
submission.
I got one other question, even though I made the motion. Mr. Albright, is that the man's name that did the appraisal?
Yes.
So I'm assuming this board will have to, or the authority will have to pay him again.
He said he would not spend another moment without further
Okay.
compensation.
Is it possible that with all the legwork he did, that would be a reduced amount?
Yes,
Okay,
but would we get him to redo it?
yes.
yeah,
Okay.
it'd be most, and
He
it-
just wants to see, he wants to see a lot of movement progression before he spends more time
Okay,
on this project.
Okay.
He's a good appraiser.
You know,
Okay.
I think he's very good.
Well, and that appraisal business was very unique, as I recall. It was very hard to find anybody. He one, and there was another in South
There
Florida.
aren't that many who really have the credentials.
right.
It's an unusual type of appraisal.
All right, good questions,
Okay.
good discussion. Any other thoughts about the corrective action plan that the motion addresses?
And may I just add one thing,
Certainly.
just so we're all clear? And this gets back to the question you asked, Scott. The suspension of the cease and desist really cannot take effect until FAA sees this and approves it.
In writing approves it.
That's good.
Right,
Yeah,
that's right.
so we can't, the vote today
Yeah,
does
yeah.
not
Not free
clear
them up,
Okay,
firm to use the track because the RPZ hadn't moved.
right.
and they're
Right.
aware of that. You've been
Right.
in discussions with them, so, okay,
Correct.
okay.
So until aircraft are not using the full extent of the runway in accordance with Craig's proposal, until that happens,
That
there's
letter
still
stays
safety
in
issue.
force, yeah, okay.
So that will be the event that suspends the cease and desist.
Okay.
Yeah, FAA's agreement with that.
Pardon me?
The FAA's concurrence with that
Yes, Right.
proposal,
right.
yeah.
Okay, I call for the question.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get this.
I want to say that
Yeah.
I talked to Craig a lot about all this, and he's done a really
Yeah.
good job of keeping this ball moving forward, being creative about trying to come up with solutions. This was his idea. And it's not his fault or anybody else's in this room that we just have had so much trouble getting a response from the FAA.
I didn't.
And I
expect
know
to
they
get-
have their difficulties too.
Yeah, I just, given especially the political climate, I didn't expect them to answer the phone, but they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were fortunate to get Melissa to answer yesterday.
Yeah,
Well, I got a-
You know, and publicly, I'll say, we appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. Because here's the thing, in the Orlando FISDO, they've lost 4. One of them was our engineer, one of our engineers, and then the one of the ladies that handles our area was the environmental person. So that's 2 out of that 4 that really impacted us. So we have some new folks, but they're all experienced, and it's like Ron Allen told us that once that firm had gone to Orlando with their attorney, that automatically shifted that thing to Atlanta, to the compliance area. So it is what it is, but thankfully we've been able to. Craig actually has really been on the phone a lot of emails back and forth trying to communicate and get clarity. So really appreciate what he's done. And I appreciate the board for also staying abreast of it, reading your emails. And if you have a question, give Craig a call. All right. That's the only item of business. So we'll consider ourselves adjourned at 5:41.
Okay.
Thank you.
less
all
than
of you.
30 minutes.